I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter, sitting in today for the great Hugh Hewitt while he is off, frolicking on the beach, hiking through the woods, though not in Canada, because apparently you're not allowed into the woods in Canada. You're also not allowed to own property. That's a whole different thing. And there's so much news today, I could spend the whole show beating up on Canada, but I'm not going to. Anyway, who the heck am I? Well, I'm a senior columnist over at townhall.com. I'm a retired United States Army colonel. I am the author of the new book. Here it is. You can see it, American Apocalypse, the Second American Civil War. You can get that on Amazon, and you should. It was a #1 military thriller. I'm also a retired trial lawyer, and for a short time, I was a stand-up comic. I've done a lot of things. I've guest hosted for Hugh for years. Since I met him, I think it was 2007, he came and was the guest speaker at my cavalry squadron's ball. And, I just... Like Michael Corleone, he just keeps pulling me back in. Today is like I said, it's an incredible news day, and it's a great news day for a guy like me. Like I said, I was an infantry colonel. I was not a JAG. I actually knew my parents. And I did a lot of work with the California Army National Guard on disasters. I was in the Los Angeles riots, Northridge earthquake. I commanded most of northern San Diego County during the 2007 fire crisis. So I kind of did the military support to civil operations stuff. In fact, I wrote the first law review article on it back in, like 1993. It's one of those things you go back and read it and you're like, oh. After 30 years of being a lawyer, I don't really practice now. But, you look back on your stuff and you go, it could have been better. But the fact is, this is my wheelhouse, especially when the president has brought out the National Guard in D.C. to assist with his takeover of law enforcement in that benighted cesspool of a capital city. It is I don't understand a couple things about this. The first thing I don't understand is how it got into the situation in the first place. You would think that if you were running a city, you would want to run it efficiently and effectively. But apparently, I don't understand the incentives in ruling a large blue city. Because obviously, they are not incentives that promote actually having peace and order and a general respect for the law. Washington, D.C., despite what everybody says in the media, oh, there's no crime in D.C. It's why I was in D.C. 3 times, and I was never murdered. Not once. I don't understand what they're talking about. Fascism. No. Washington, D.C. is a hellish cesspool of crime and corruption, and it's got to be fixed. We cannot have our shining city on the hill be a bubbling cauldron of human waste, and that's what it is. All right? There's carjackings, there's murders, there's shootings, there's robberies, there's mugging. It's a mess. So Donald Trump has said, I've had enough. After in Spanish, his name is Los Pelotas Grandes, or Las Pelotas Grandes? I don't know. Got beat up. I mean, badly beat up after a gang of youths decided to start hassling his female companion. He stepped in, saved her, got himself a concussion out of it. Donald Trump said, that's it, we're done. They've had a congressional intern murdered. They've had people robbed. They've had representatives robbed, mostly Democrats, as part of the universe's twist towards irony. And he just said no. And yesterday he came out and said, I'm taking over the police department and I'm putting the National Guard on the street. So the first thing is, what's the National Guard going to do? That's a great question. There's a lot of posse comitatus issues, and it isn't exactly clear. I think the best use for the National Guard is as a presence. You have a couple of hopped-up MPs or infantrymen with M4 rifles who are standing there. And I know from personal experiences, weirdos, losers, mutations, scumbags, hobos, and junkies tend to go in a different direction when they see a guy packing heat who is not looking like he's just going to go back on his lunch hour and start munching donuts like the Washington police have been doing. Now, in fairness, the Washington police have been told not to report crimes. They've been told not to intervene in crimes. They've been told not to chase criminals. And how can that happen? How could that be? Well, when you have a leadership like the Washington, D.C. Police Department, Metropolitan Police Department, I guess, you're going to have problems. Let me just play a cut from the police chief, and I let me do the air quotes thing for you listening on Salem Radio Network, as opposed to the Salem News Channel, where you could be watching me in all my pre-Labor Day sport jacket glory. Pamela Smith at a press conference. Cut one.
Tell us what the chain of command is now.
What does that mean?
Well, is it Pam Bondi speaking to the mayor?
Okay, stop right there. Let's review. What will the chain of command? What will the chain of command be? And she's like baffled. She's like, chain of command? What do you mean chain of command? She's like glancing about, going, what the hell? It's amazing. I don't understand. She was a police officer-ish for about 24 years. I was an Army officer for 27 years. Let me tell you, if there was one thing I always knew at every single second of my 27 or so years as an Army officer, was my chain of command and my place in it. Whether I was up near the top or down near the bottom, as PFC Schlichter, I knew what a chain of command was. She's like baffled by chain of command, like a gold chain, like a rapper. Is that a thing? Am I like LL Cool J? I don't understand this. How do you not know what a chain of command? Well, that's weird. She's been in for 24. Now, admittedly, she was in the park police. I don't know really what the park police do. Maybe they provide personal security for Yogi and Boo Boo. I don't know. Okay? It doesn't sound like, an elite hostage rescue team. But she got brought over to the Washington Police Department, not as a cop, but as a diversity officer. Like 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. What do you do in the police? Well, I handle diversity. I'm sorry, you handle diversity for the Washington, D.C. Police Department? That's literally got to be the easiest job on earth. Okay? And does Washington, D.C. have a big problem with anti-black prejudice? Because if so, that's news to me. That's a surprising turn of events. Anyway, so she's brought into this vitally important role, which would be like, buggy whip wrangler, or unicorn groom. So I mean, hi, I'm the diversity officer in Washington, D.C. I don't ever go to work. And then she gets promoted to being the police chief. And along the way, she's never picked up on what the chain of command is, even though she's literally at the top of it. She's the police chief. If there was a pyramid, she'd be the little point right up at the top. And she's like, chain of command? What could that be? Now, so if you're wondering how Washington, D.C. went so very, very wrong, I give you police chief Pamela Smith. But I have a feeling not for long. However, we've got a long time to go here at the Hugh Hewitt radio program, and I'm with you all the way. Guest host Kurt Schlichter here. Stick around.
Hey, it's Hugh, bopping in from vacation. I, of course, pre-recorded this before I left, but I took with me my consumer cellular phone. And you would be doing that, too, if you were concerned about having great service, but also having maximum savings from your cell service. ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh. ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh. Or call 1-800-411-4454. That's 1-800-411-4454. And remember, code HUGH25 when you use that code, whether you go online to ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh or you call them at 1-800-411-4454. If you use HUGH25, you'll get $5 off each of your first 5-month invoices. Now, you'll also save a lot of money with Consumer Cellular because that's what they do. They make sure you don't overpay for data. They're focused on people who are 50 and older, most of whom do not need unlimited data. But if you do need unlimited data, 2 lines for people over 60. Keep your old number, keep your old device, keep all your data, but pay just $60 a month. That's Consumer Cellular, 1-800-411-4454. Call them today.
When I guest host for Hugh Hewitt, I may be a retired Army colonel, I may be a trial lawyer, I may be the author of American Apocalypse, the Second American Civil War. I may be a senior columnist at Town Hall, but you know what I am first and foremost? An appreciator of great alternative music. And that's what we have here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program when I guest host. We have the best bumper music ever. No Doobie Brothers. You're not going to get any Joni Mitchell. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to rock and roll. You get 2 for the price of 1 there. Wow. I just want to play it one more time because my mind is so completely blown by Pamela Smith, the alleged police chief in Washington, D.C. For a short time, I think the clock's a-ticking. Cut 1.
That's what the chain of command is now?
What does that mean?
Well, is it Pam Bondi's
Okay, stop. What's the chain of command now? What does that mean? This chain of command of which you speak. Is this some elven artifact that will be the subject of a quest with me and my hobbit friends? No, you ridiculous woman. Why are all these police chiefs ridiculous women who look like they can't do a push-up, much less tackle a perp? Well, they're clearly not being hired for their skills, and a basic skill of anybody in a hierarchical paramilitary organization would be to understand the concept of a chain of command. Now, fortunately, people like Pamela Smith have some backup, and their backup is the entire regime media. The entire regime media has weighed in that Donald Trump's, the elected president of the United States, use of the law passed by Congress to execute his duties as assigned by the Constitution constitutes fascism. I mean, we've had a lot of defining fascism down lately. Like 2 weeks ago, it was like hot girls in jeans. Oh, that's fascism. You know, if everything's fascism, nothing is. And I'm kind of afraid that, along the way, people are going to go, well, pretty girls, law and order. If that's fascism, sounds pretty good to me. I don't think we want that. That would not be optimal. Sometimes you drive a brand down. Don't associate important things like hot girls and law and order with gross, disgusting things like fascism. Please don't do that. Please stop. But the regime media can't stop. The regime media has gone literally insane. I'd like to play a cut for you. It's on Morning Joe by one Anand Giridharadas. I think that's how you pronounce it. I mean, my name's Schlichter, so I get his pain. Let's listen to cut 7 with Anand.
I think it's really important to be clear about what is going on here. And a relatively small crime problem is being used for specific authoritarian purposes that we know and understand. So let's be clear about D.C. does have one really big crime problem, which was the January 6th insurrection incited by the current President of the United States. And his first act in coming back was pardoning all the people who tried to overturn constitutional republic order in Washington, D.C. When I go to D.C., I'm not afraid of losing my wallet so much as I'm afraid of losing my vote. I'm not afraid of losing my wallet so much as I'm afraid that my children's freedom to breathe will be stolen in a world where climate change policy is non-existent. I'm afraid...
Okay, stop. Okay, we need to discuss the elephant in the room here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program with Anand Giridharadas. What's with the hair? Now, if you're not watching on the Salem News Channel, and you should watch on the Salem News Channel because I'm really happy about my sport coat today. You would have seen his hair. Adam, do you have that clip we mentioned? This will give you, if you haven't seen it, this may give you a little taste of what he looks like.
They call me heat miser. Whatever I touch starts to melt in my clutch. I'm too much.
Okay, all right. I understand that. I mean, clearly he's obsessed with climate change because he finds that more important than stopping people from being robbed, raped, and murdered on the streets of Washington, D.C., which I guess is why his hair is channeling Heat Miser. Dude, let me get you a present. It's called a mirror. All right. I got enough problems with my hair. All right. It's fallen back like the Italian army in the face of the enemy. But, I try not to look extremely goofy on purpose. But the sheer ridiculousness of his tonsorial travesty is dwarfed by the utter moral and intellectual bankruptcy of what he's saying. He's saying, well, the real problem is a small fracas on January 6, 2021. That's over 4 years ago. By a bunch of people who, if you encounter them late at night on the street, they would probably help you cross it if you were an old lady, as opposed to knock you down and take your purse. Okay? These were not street criminals. There's a difference between a protest that got out of control and gangs of feral criminals wandering the streets, looking for normal citizens to brutalize. Now, this raises a question that I find raised all the time when I encounter the left, like Anand and his hairstyle. Is Anand Giriharatharas stupid, or does Anand Giriharatharas think the people watching him are stupid? It's an open question. Someone's stupid because you don't say something like, well, yeah, we just had our 100th murder in our nation's capital, but the real problem? Some grandmas taking selfies in the rotunda. That's fascism, folks! Okay. We got a lot more to go here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. Stick around.
Hold it right there. I'm back from vacation. Not really. I pre-recorded this on Friday. It's my Relief Factor segment because I take Relief Factor with me on vacation, just like I take it every day on this program. And we're going to remind you every hour, even when I'm out on vacation, that Relief Factor does indeed work. If you take it every single day, you will feel much better because it works with your body's anti-inflammatory system to reduce the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. You should be doing the former. You're definitely doing the latter. Every day, Relief Factor means more and more to a comfortable life. Stop using the over-counter meds. Try it the old-fashioned way. Icarian curcumin with Veratron Omega. And the starter pack, $19.95, gets you 3 weeks of Relief Factor. You take 3 on the first day, every day for the first week, 2 on the second week, every day on the second week, and then 1 on the third week, and then forever after. 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, or visit their website, relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com.
You can tell by the bumper music that it's me, because, of course, I'm always going to have the best in alternative new wave and post-punk music here for you on the Hugh Hewitt Show. And half the audience is sitting there going, what the heck? I once guest hosted for Dennis Prager, who we're all praying for. And I had the Sex Pistols as bumper music. I never guest hosted for him again. So, Hugh Hewitt, model of musical tolerance. And Hugh is also a guy who wants to make a difference. And that's why people come to him when they have something we need to get together on, something we need to work together on. Americans for a Balanced Budget. StopHealthCostHikes.com. Congress secured a historical victory for President Trump and the American people by passing the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. But that win is now at risk. A massive healthcare tax hike looms if Congress fails to act. Americans for a Balanced Budget is sounding the alarm. Key healthcare tax credits are set to expire at the end of this year. And if that happens, 24 million Americans can face skyrocketing healthcare costs. Millions may lose coverage entirely. Rural communities would be hit especially hard with job losses, fewer providers, reduced access to care. We can't let that happen. Congress needs to act now to protect these vital tax credits for Americans who buy their own health insurance. President Trump's pollster found that 77% of voters, including over 70% of Trump supporters, are more likely to vote for candidates who preserve these credits. That's a statistical anomaly. No one agrees on things 77% of the time. But they agree on this. Americans for a Balanced Budget is calling on Congress to protect the full promise of the One Big Beautiful Bill by preventing this devastating tax health care thing from happening. Your voice counts. Visit StopHealthCareCostsHikes.com to tell Congress, protect tax credits, stop rising costs, act before it's too late. Stop higher healthcare costs. Visit StopHealthCostsHikes.com today. It's always hard to pick the stupidest member of Congress. You got Mazie Hirono in it. You know, that she's like the secretariat of dumb. There's a few others. Tammy Duckworth's kind of borderline. But boy, you know, there's another. There's Maxine Waters. And she combines stupid with evil. I know I had to clean up her mess when she helped inspire the LA riots in 1991. I was out on the streets with the California Army National Guard. It was 92, actually. And I saw the damage this evil woman did. So it's especially ironic after promoting civil disorder and the deaths of dozens and dozens of people that she would say the following. Cut 5.
Words mean nothing. Actions mean everything. Watch this. Watch it very closely. Ask a lot of questions. Focus those cameras on everything that's going on, because this president is trying to lead us into what could be called a civil war.
Okay. This president is trying to lead us into what could be called a civil war. Well, let me tell you, I have a new novel, American Apocalypse, the Second American Civil War, where I talk about how leftists are doing just that. With their absolutely abandonment of any kind of norms, guardrails, rules, customs, or regulations, they are leading us down a dark, dark path. And it's frightening. So somebody may be leading us towards, God forbid, civil war. And we are a far, far way from that. But it's certainly not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is reestablishing norms. He's bringing law and order to Washington, D.C. He's bringing economic freedom back to the United States of America by his cutting regulations, with his tax policies. He is ending weird, perverted, freaky policies that target our children. Donald Trump's the guy who is the answer to the danger that's being created by the Marxist jihadi access of mediocrity, of which Maxine Waters is the poster child. I mean, when you look, if you want somebody who's both dumb and evil, your source for dumbness and evilness, well, that's Maxine Waters, because she's got plenty to spare. And we've got plenty more to come here on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. It brings me great pleasure to bring one of my two governors to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome, Governor Greg Abbott.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Governor Abbott. My compliments to your state. I have a second house in Houston, but I'm, as the kids say, I'm bi. That is, I'm Texan and Californian. So I kind of, you kind of share me with your friend Gavin Newsom. How's that relationship with Gavin going?
Oh man, it's just lovely. Crazy. My only hope is that you spend more than half your time in Texas. Otherwise, your taxes are going to be way too high.
Well, you got cut off a little there. I think what you were saying is, you hope I spend more time in Texas. That would certainly make my accountant happy. I would Texas, of course, doesn't have an income tax, and California has about 3 income taxes.
So in Texas, we constitutionally ban an income tax. We passed constitutional bans on wealth tax, capital gains tax, death tax. We make it virtually impossible for if there's ever a time when Democrats may ever take over the state of Texas, they will find it impossible to begin to impose the types of taxes that exist in California. That said, I got to tell you about all the California businesses that are moving to Texas. The biggest complaint they have is actually not the taxes, it's the regulations, it's the crime. It's just the environment that exists in California that makes it impossible to work, to live, to raise a family. And they find it a whole lot easier to do all of that in the great state of Texas. That said, go ahead.
Oh, well, Governor Abbott, of course, I came to California in 1972 when Governor Ronald Reagan was there, and I grew up in the golden age of California, and I loved every minute of it, and it breaks my heart that my adopted home state has chosen to alienate folks like me. But when I'm walking down the streets of the Heights in Houston, I feel safe, not least of which because I'm usually carrying a SIG P365 on me because it's a free state where a retired colonel can do that without asking some GS3 for permission. But it also there's a vibe in Texas. There's an excitement that used to be in California.
Well, first, I'm the governor who signed into law constitutional carry. I signed into law every gun right you can imagine. Open carry, constitutional carry, campus carry, etc. Listen, guns have been a part of our lives ever since the Battle of the Alamo. And it's that vibe that you were talking about that's perpetuated since the Battle of the Alamo. It's the can-do spirit. We know that however tough things are, we can always find a way to rise above it and achieve what we want to achieve, and we make sure we have a government that will not hinder your ability to chart your own pathway and to succeed the way you want to succeed in life. And so Texas truly is the land of opportunity, and that's why Texas has led the country in the most new jobs created. We've led for every economic development award that could exist because every type of business can come here, can grow here, and can succeed here, as well as individuals.
Well, Governor Abbott, I'd be worried about Texas, except you don't appear to have any Democrats anymore. What's the status on the great Democrat runaway scheme?
How embarrassing is this for them as it defines their character? I just made reference to the Alamo. What the Alamo was all about was Texans staying and fighting despite the odds that they were going to lose their life. And we've been having that fighting spirit ever since then, except for the Democrats. When the going got tough for the Democrats, it looked like they were going to have to take a vote that was not going to go their way. They did not stand and fight. They ran away. And of all places to run away to. So the issue that you're talking about is the redistricting, where Texas is redrawing the maps for the members of Congress to ensure that the people in the state of Texas are going to be able to vote for their candidate of choice, which is going to happen to be Republican, in 5 new seats. These Democrats, they had only one way to stop it, and that was to break quorum in the Texas House of Representatives, and they ran away. So where did they run away to? They ran away to Illinois. Illinois is the quintessential example of gerrymandering. If you're going to protest map drawing and protest what you claim is gerrymandering, why would you go to Illinois? That's like if you're going to protest beer, going to Milwaukee. It's just insane.
Well, look, if you're a Texan and you're going to channel a Crockett, you should channel Davy and not Jasmine. That's just how I feel. But Governor Abbott, look, you guys say you can carve up 5 new Republican seats. I think those are rookie numbers. I think you can do better. If Governor Newsom fulfills his threat, which for me is moot because my California congressman is Ted Lieu, so oh well. Could you gerrymander even harder?
So we're looking at exactly that. First, to echo what you're saying, that the reality is all these blustering threats by Gavin Newsom, by Pritzker, by the governor of New York, they're all hollow because, for one, there's no way Illinois can be drawn more gerrymandered. There's really no way that California can be drawn more gerrymandered. But that point aside, in California, they have a constitutional issue to deal with. They would need a constitutional amendment. And the same is also true in New York. So bottom line is, as much as they talk big, they can't really do anything. That said, I will always be prepared for whatever is necessary. And if California were to somehow make the mistake of trying to redraw lines in a way that would reduce Republican representation in the United States Congress in California, trust me, I will be prepared to make sure Texas is able to draw maps that picks up even more Republicans in the congressional delegation in Texas.
Well, Governor Greg Abbott, thank you for joining us on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Our mutual friend Jim Pickle from Texas, who was with you last weekend, sends his regards. And, other Republican governors, watch what Greg Abbott's doing and do that. We just made some news, Dwayne, with Governor Greg Abbott.
Yes.
Because earlier I called him accidentally Philip Abbott, who was on the original FBI with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. Remember that? It was very formative back when the FBI was
back when they
not a disgusting deep state nightmare.
And they were a respectable outfit.
Exactly. So what news did we make?
Well, he did note that he's going to keep naming special session after special session until they get the job done.
Nice.
But there was a clip out there from Gavin Newsom, our governor in California, and we should play that clip
let's do that.
Let the audience, because here's what Gavin Newsom's threatening in retaliation.
Hey, President Trump, it's time to stand down. It's time to make another phone call to Greg Abbott. This time, instead of calling him and telling him you're quote-unquote entitled to 5 congressional seats, it's time to tell him to stand down. It's time to recognize that democracy is at risk. It's time to, dare I say, do the right thing. Actually see how that feels for you, doing the right thing. If you don't, California will neutralize anything you do in the state of Texas. California will continue to punch above its weight. We believe in democracy. We believe in the enduring values of our founding fathers. 249 years. We're not going to sit back passively. We're not going to sit back and watch you light democracy on fire. We will fight fire with fire.
Who's advising him these days? William Shatner? We will fight this battle.
And he's going to go up and do the little two-hand chop thing.
Yes.
To knock out Greg Abbott.
Yes.
Also, I note the heat miser hair.
California has 9 Republican districts out of 52 total.
Yes, 52.
Total. And California is threatening to knock it down and recarve everything up illegally because it's in this
Oh, that doesn't
state.
matter.
Yeah,
Let's not even pretend.
Rule of law doesn't matter here. But they're trying to knock it down to 2. So they're trying to do a net gain of 7 Democratic seats to neutralize whatever Greg Abbott does in Texas. Here's what Greg Abbott said at the very end, if you heard what he said. The map that they're already talking about doing is adding 5 potentially Republican-favored seats. Mm-hmm. He says, we don't have to do that. We can carve another 10 to 12 out of that map.
Nice.
And so you start running out of Republicans in California at that point. He can't neutralize Texas.
Look, here's the problem. Democrats don't seem to understand how threats work. Okay, to threaten somebody, you have to threaten that you're going to do something to them in the future, not that you've already done it to them.
Right.
That's how threats work. I know. I was a lawyer. I threaten people all the time.
Now, coming up at the top of the hour, we actually have a little more detail on what's going on in California and what the Democrats are trying to do to recarve the map and how, a little conflict of interest may be creeping in.
Oh, just a little one. We've got Jen Van Laar from Red State, and then we've got Byron York. We got so much stuff, folks. I'd like to welcome one of my compatriots over at the Town Hall Media crew from Red State, where she's the managing editor. It's my very good friend, Jennifer Van Laar. Jennifer, welcome.
Hi, how's it going?
Show. It is going great. I haven't seen you in a while, but you've been hanging out with my wife.
That's right.
Which, means I get to stay home and order barbecue. and then more barbecue, which so it kind of works out for me. But Jen, besides being a close personal friend of the Schlichter family, you are also one of those rare conservative unicorns out in the pundit world. You're actually a reporter. You actually break stories, and you've got one heck of a story about conflict of interest in the California redistricting scam. Let us in on the secret. What's up?
Well, I mean, it's not surprising in any way because we know how Gavin Newsom and his Dem cabal operate. But they have got Paul Mitchell, who's well known in California as a data and drawing the districts kind of guy, making the maps behind the scenes. But he's actually, he has clients in both the California Assembly, California Senate, and in Congress. So who is he going to be most worried about when drawing these maps? Is it something that will help the voters, something that will keep communities together, or is it something that's just designed to elect Democrats and protect incumbents? And pretty sure you already know the answer to that.
Now, what exactly is his position vis-a-vis this independent commission? I mean, how does this all work? And how does he get to influence it?
He's not supposed to have any position at all, because even to be part of this redistricting commission, to apply for it, you can't even have been a roommate of somebody who worked on some random campaign a few years before. Even you have to be so completely out of the process to even apply to be a commissioner. And those are the people who voters said overwhelmingly should be drawing these districts. So Mitchell, in addition to having his PDI, political data company, started this Redistricting Partners company, which is basically lobbyists for any kind of Dems who want to have districts drawn their way. And they do things like make up fake grassroots groups that send representatives to these hearings to testify and advocate for things. Like, people don't know that they're actually political advocates there. They pass themselves off as like, oh, I'm just for the Asian American community and that kind of thing. So he's well known already, even when we allegedly have an independent commission, which I would dispute. But so he was been taken in by Robert Rivas, the assembly leader, and Gavin Newsom to just draw these maps that are going to be foisted on us next week.
What are these maps going to look like, Jennifer Van Laar?
Well, we know that there's some personal retaliation going on. Governor Newsom has specifically mentioned Kevin Kiley as someone he would like to draw out of a favorable district. And a few others that they just want to retaliate against. They want to try to make it where I believe it's 9 seats that Republicans have now in California can be down at 4 or 5.
Do you think that's possible without one of those dummy manders where they accidentally create vulnerable districts where the districts weren't vulnerable before?
It's going to be tough because there's so much horse trading going on. You have the Voting Rights Act you have to deal with. You have all the communities of interest stuff that they give lip service to. But then you have a bunch of assembly members and state Senate members who will be terming out and wanting to run for Congress, in addition to the incumbents in Congress that all want to protect their seats. And so if they can, they're going to be having to make some Democrats unhappy, and it'll be showing how they're drawn will end up showing us who the Democrats who really matter in the state are.
Jennifer Van Laar, are we going to see some good old-fashioned Dem-on-Dem violence as candidates and potential incumbents, candidates and potential candidates start fighting with each other for that extra +4 Democrat vote? Because the Republicans have to be dumped somewhere. That's the idea. You try and sink their votes somewhere. And no Democrat wants it. They want a +12 district, not a +3.
Right, because even as we see someone like David Valadao in the Central Valley, his district is a Dem majority, but because of his standing in the community, he keeps getting reelected as a Republican. So they're going to have a hard time doing that because we know increasingly Latinos and even the Black community are voting more for Trump and for conservatives. So they can't just draw it on racial or ethnic lines and assume that certain people are going to vote Democrat.
Well, look, just today, the Supreme Court set oral arguments for October 15th for a VRA, Voting Rights Act case that basically could say, hey, no more racially drawn gerrymandered districts. In other words, you no longer is there some requirement that they have to be drawn with regard to various minority groups, which tends to turn out to be Democrats, though down in the Rio Grande Valley, we found out that that's not always the case. If the VRA goes away, is that going to have an effect on the California maps?
I think it definitely would, but even in California on the assembly level, we had a Republican down at the border in Imperial County elected out of a huge Dem majority district. So like you said, when you gets to their the people that are dealing with the border issue or have dealt with it, they know that they don't want Democrats dealing with that. So again, there could be a little issue there. But the thing that not a lot of people are bringing up, and you might remember this because you're a lawyer in California, back in 1983, there was a California Supreme Court case based on an attempted mid-decade redistricting. And the California Supreme Court then said, no, you've already adopted maps that are legally compliant, and there's no reason to go back in the middle of the decade and redistrict. So nobody has dealt with that precedent and how that can affect things with this attempt that Gavin Newsom is doing.
Well, look, I practiced for 30 years before giving up my partnership, and I have no doubt that Gavin Newsom will be able to get whatever judicial rulings he needs to do whatever he wants out of the California court system. I have zero doubt.
I have no doubt about that too. I would be surprised. I guess Willie Brown didn't have the same pull back in 1983 that Gavin Newsom has.
Well, it really wasn't the same Democrat Party, because what we now have here is a very hard left Democrat Party, which brings me to the next issue here in California. Is there any hope? I mean, we have Steve Hilton running. He's getting some attention. But do we have any hope to bring back, I'm not even going to say a majority of Republicans, though I grew up when California was majority Republican, but a significant, at least supermajority defeating number of Republicans in office. Do you think there's any chance of that?
I think there definitely is a chance to break the supermajority in the next cycle. I would never claim that we're going to get anywhere close to equal representation in the near term in California. But Steve Hilton's a great candidate. And the great thing that Republicans have going for us in California is you don't have anyone with the personality of Gavin Newsom on the Dem side. There's not any clear winner on that side. I mean, Katie Porter is not going to be inspiring people to go to the polls. Well,
Katie Porter is going to remind every Californian of his first wife. And yes. She's just, Gavin Newsom has a kind of animal charm to him. And I've never met him, but supposedly he's personable in real life. And he's also unencumbered by anything like morality and consistency. But the rest of them, I mean, they're just hacks. We have about 15 seconds. Can you assess Steve Hilton's chances?
I think they're good. The biggest problem right now is some people on the right who think that because he's an immigrant that they shouldn't vote for him, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But yeah.
Did they like Schwarzenegger because he was an immigrant too? Well, wait, maybe not the best example.
Yeah,
maybe not the best example. Not the great example. Anyway, thank you, Jen Van Laar, managing editor over at Red State, part of the Salem family of companies. I'm Kurt Schlichter here on the Salem Radio Network, Salem News Channel, sitting in for the great Hugh Hewitt. Stick around. We got a lot more to come.
Hey, listeners, I'm back from vacation to remind you about WebRoot, because even when you're on the road, in fact, probably more when you're on the road, you have to be worried about identity theft. You're using public Wi-Fi, things like that. People are constantly trying to steal your identity. It happens every 1 to 2 seconds in the United States. It can cost 100 to 200 hours of effort, and goodness knows how much money lost by the time you fix having your identity stolen. So get WebRoot protection. They have two different kind of products: the WebRoot Total Protection Package or WebRoot Essentials. All you want to do is to get the data on both of them and make a choice. Go to webroot.com/Hewitt, Hewitt. Now, what do you get when you get WebRoot? You get a VPN for up to 10 devices. You get password protection. You get a password manager. You get a system optimizer, identity protection with advanced dark web monitoring. All the sort of things that you need, but you'll only get if you go to webroot.com/Hewitt. That's webroot.com/Hewitt.
This is one heck of a day. I love that Runaway by Del Shannon. Just watching the Democrats run from the inevitable Grim Reaper of redistricting in Texas. It just warms my heart. And that they head up to Illinois in the ample shadow of J.B. Pritzker is just too much for me. To talk more about it, I'm joined by Ned Ryan. He's the CEO of American Majority. Follow him at Ned Ryan on the Twitter machine. Ned, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Great to be with you, Kurt. Looking forward to it.
Okay, redistricting. You guys like me and you are based, so it's like we don't even bother with it. Look at the Democrats are hypocrites. Why they redistricted and they gerrymandered and we haven't. It's bad, and we're just sort of like, just exercise power.
Exactly.
What do you think?
No, I mean, this to me has always been. I don't even want to say a great disappointment with Republicans. Just shameful behavior by Republicans when given political power, they don't know what to do with it. You were given political power for a reason. You should use it. And I think Donald Trump has actually started to inspire some Republicans to wield that political power as it should be wielded. I don't think there should be any questions about us going and looking at Texas and Ohio and Florida, and I think Indiana and Missouri as well. And if we can get 13 to 15 new Republican seats before the 26 elections, that would be spectacular. And Democrats have done this all the time. I think New York did it in a random in-between, census time a few years ago. They decided they were going to redistrict to strengthen their hold on Democrat seats in that state. And so for Republicans to even have even a few doubts about this, I think is insane. It also tells me there's some Republicans that still don't know what time it is. You're not dealing with your granddaddy's Democratic Party. You're dealing with really a Marxist-infused party that masquerades as the Democratic Party of old. So you better use your political power to send them into the political wilderness. And if you don't, and I'll say this, Kurt, one last thing. I think Republicans have a moral obligation to use their political power to send the Marxists back into the political wilderness, and to not do so in many ways is immoral.
Good Lord, Ned, I love when you talk like that. It's it's so refreshing. Now we just had Governor Greg Abbott here on the Hugh Hewitt Show, and he said, we're looking at 5 right now. I said, well, those, that's a rookie numbers. He goes, well, how about 10 to 12? How about that?
Now we're talking.
Oh,
now we're talking.
Baby. I don't, as I mentioned before, I don't think Democrats understand how threats work. Now, I was a lawyer for a long time. I understand how threats work. And typically, when you're threatening something, you'll threaten to do something that you haven't done already.
Exactly. No, I mean, there are so many states. There's 8 states, I believe, 8 blue states in which there are no Republican districts. I use Massachusetts as an example that got 36% of the vote for Trump in 24. There are precisely 0 Republican seats in that state. And Democrats have gerrymandered a lot of these states that they control already, to the point of, I'm not really sure how much more they could squeeze out of states like California or Illinois, some of these deep blue states, because they've already rigged them so much. And I think Republicans have truly been sitting on their hands, fighting with one hand behind their back, and not doing the same. This is all legal. It has been done to us, and it is shameful that we haven't done it in return. If nothing else, forget the morality of it, but for the sake of self-preservation and for the Republican Party to exist in the future, they should be doing the exact same thing in the red states that they control. So I say more power to them. But I want to say this thing too, Kurt. We're talking just about 26. It is now incumbent upon Republicans to think about 28 and 30 and the census, to clean the census rolls, to see if we can't have a once-in-a-lifetime seismic shift in the political landscape that might send this Marxist party, masquerading as the Democrats, into the political wilderness for 10, 15, 20 years. And by that, I mean a clean census that might move, at a minimum, 25 seats and electoral votes in the red states. But potentially, if Republicans got aggressive and a few things actually fell, in the right place, we could get 40-plus seats after the 2030 census. And at that point, 40 more electoral votes, 40 more House seats, Republicans could dominate the political landscape for a very, very long time. And that's why you're seeing Democrats panic so hard right now.
Well, Ned Ryan, look, we're seeing Democrats do things that to normal people like us are completely insane. I mean, yesterday they decided, well, we're going to hop on the 20 side of the 80-20 issue of not having roving feral gangs of rapists, looters, and murderers wandering through our nation's capital. They seem to reflexively oppose anything Trump does, no matter how common sense, no matter whether it used to be their position. They used to be pro-tariff in some manner. What is the Democrat end game? How do they think this plays out?
Well, first of all, Trump derangement syndrome is a very real thing. It's an incurable disease, and those that have been infected by it lose all sense of rational thought. And Democrats' reflexive, reaction to anything Trump says is to do the exact opposite. I want to point out this whole idea of that somehow to have clean streets that are free of crime is authoritarian or racist. That's their reaction. As you said, 80-20 in the greater world. But think about what it is in the District of Columbia, which is a bastion of blue. I mean, I think Kamala Harris got 90+% of the vote in the DC, in the District of Columbia. It's a 65% issue for the residents of the District of Columbia who say that crime is a very serious problem. So you have a deep blue bastion where the residents of the District of Columbia, almost 70% of them are saying, well, no, that's actually true. Crime is a very serious problem in the District of Columbia, but you've got the rest of the Democratic Party, you've got the corporate propaganda screaming bloody murder because, well, it was Trump that pointed it out and Trump that's trying to come up with a solution. So, orange man bad, therefore whatever he's saying must be bad and we can't agree with it. When in fact, Trump to me, the whole thing, his whole term, first term and this one, it's just the triumph of common sense. All he is actually proposing is we actually have safe and secure communities. We actually have clean communities. And that used to be something that we could all agree on. And it shows how deranged and how far left the Democratic Party has become, that they can't even have a rational conversation about clean streets that are free of crime.
Well, Ned Ryan, CEO of American Majority, you can follow him at Ned Ryan, and he has a spicy Twitter timeline. Oh, I mean X. I got to get that right. I'm old school. I'm Kurt Schlichter. I'm guest hosting for the great Hugh Hewitt here on the Salem Radio Network and the Salem News Channel. Stick around. We got a lot more to go.
Hold it right there. I'm back from vacation. Not really. I pre-recorded this on Friday. It's my Relief Factor segment because I take Relief Factor with me on vacation just like I take it every day on this program. And we're going to remind you every hour, even when I'm out on vacation, that Relief Factor does indeed work. If you take it every single day, you will feel much better because it works with your body's anti-inflammatory system to reduce the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. You should be doing the former. You're definitely doing the latter. Every day, Relief Factor means more and more to a comfortable life. Stop using the over-counter meds. Try it the old-fashioned way. Icarian curcumin and Veratron Omega. And the starter pack, $19.95, gets you 3 weeks of Relief Factor. You take 3 on the first day, every day for the first week, 2 on the second week, every day on the second week, and then 1 on the third week, and then forever after. 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, or visit their website, relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com.
A flock of seagulls with Iran. Now, that's part of our theme, which is terrible, terrible hair. We had, Anand Girihadaras, who looked like Heat Miser from the Christmas special, A Year Without Santa Claus. And then we had Gavin Newsom. There he goes. I'm Mr. Heat Miser. I'm on MSNBC. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Climate change. So we're building on a theme there. This is a wild and scary world. And you have got to be proactive about how you're protecting your own prosperity. There are many good reasons to buy gold and silver. Bank failures, digital currency volatility, AmFed coin and bullion, that's AmericanFederal.com, is our choice for precious metals here at the Hugh Hewitt program. If you ask AmFed owner Nick Grovich to simplify the case for precious metals, he'll tell you when President Roosevelt recalled the gold in circulation and paid people with paper money, they received a $20 bill for a $20 gold piece. Today, that $20 bill won't even fill up half of your gas tank. But the gold price, that's $3,400. Which would you rather own, the gold or the dollars? You can't rely on the government, folks. You can't rely on anything except what people have relied on for thousands of years. Am-Fed coin and bullion. Nick's been in this industry for 42 years. He's proud of providing transparency and fair pricing to build trusted relationships. Now, if you're interested in buying or selling, call Nick and his team at Am-Fed Coin and Bullion, 800-221-7694. That's AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. We talk a lot about chaos here on the Hugh Hewitt program, and I got to say, I sometimes worry. I sometimes worry about where we're going. Listen to what Maxine Waters had to say. That's cut number 5.
Words mean nothing. Actions mean everything. Watch this. Watch it very closely. Ask a lot of questions. Focus those cameras on everything that's going on, because this president is trying to lead us into what could be called a civil war.
A civil war, says Maxine Waters. She's already done it, because I was there. I was there in 1992 with the 3rd Battalion, 160th Infantry, on the streets of Los Angeles. My unit was in Inglewood. Everything was on fire, folks. A fire stoked by Maxine Waters and her communist lies. She is a terrible person, and this threat of civil war, as if she is somehow going to threaten us into surrendering our rights, into being disenfranchised, into submit to this left-wing nonsense that she's been pushing for decades. It's very, very dangerous. I served in the ruins of a civil war in Kosovo. I spent 16 months training for and deployed over there. And I saw what happens when neighbor turned against neighbor. And I got to tell you, it affected me. And you see all this chaos there. Everything's authoritarian. You're Nazis. Everything's authoritarian. Pretty girls are authoritarian. Law and order is authoritarian. Terrorists are authoritarian. Everything's authoritarian except authoritarianism, which is what the left does. If they ever get power, heaven forfend, God forbid, who knows what they're going to do? Who knows what they will attempt to try? But we know their goal. Their goal is to keep power forever. We've seen it with the redistricting stuff. Oh, we could totally redistrict, but if you do it, it's, let me guess, authoritarianism, just like jeans on a blonde. It's authoritarian. I wrote a book about it, a novel. It's a new one, American Apocalypse, the Second American Civil War. And it was the #1 military thriller for a while at Amazon. American Apocalypse is a scary book. It's like my book, The Attack, which I've talked about on here with Hugh. It is, I try and punch you in the gut to show you what we're facing, to show you the real story. And I rely on my military background, a retired colonel. I rely on my legal background, retired, well, not really retired, but kind of non-practicing lawyer, much like Hugh. My license are valid, but I don't actually use them. And my experience as a pundit, a commentator, as an observer and a student of history. American Apocalypse, the Second American Civil War, right here. You can go get it at Amazon. And I guarantee that you will be glad you read it, though some of it may keep you up at night. American Apocalypse, out at Amazon by me, Kurt Schlichter. I'm going to be here for the rest of the show, and we've got some great stuff coming up, so don't you go anywhere. One of my favorite things about guest hosting on the Hugh Hewitt Show is when I get to talk to the people that usually I just have to listen to and watch. And one of those people, one of those very special folks, is Washington Examiner chief political correspondent Byron York. Byron, welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Oh, I always... this is like one of my favorite parts of guest hosting on a Tuesday, because you're here and I instead of shouting impotently at my car radio, I can actually ask you questions. And let me just pitch it to you. How's this redistricting thing going to work out?
Well, I don't really know. But Mike, in the past, fleeing the state to try to obstruct the legislature hasn't worked. If you remember back, it was 2011, they did it in Wisconsin for trying to stop Scott Walker's really landmark law, and they fled to Illinois, by the way, just the same place the Texas Democrats have gone, and it didn't work. The law went into effect, and it was a great success. In Texas, they've actually done it before. That didn't work, and so now they're doing it again. And my guess is, in the long run, or maybe even the kind of short run, it's not going to work.
You know, Byron York, I get the impression that the Democrats are listening. All of them are listening to the same consultant. And he's saying, you know, you can't really do anything, so get out there and be performative. Go pound on the door at an ICE facility, and yeah, you're going to get turned away by some GS3, but, you know, then go make a video about it. Get on the floor of the Senate and with your eyes bugging out, scream about authoritarianism, rail at the perfidy of blonde girls lounging around in jeans. Just get out there and talk, even though you can't do anything. Am I wrong? Is this all performance art?
Well, part of it is, and you know, part of it is actually kind of the fact that they really don't have any options now, because to say one slightly understanding thing about them, when you're a political party and you do not have control of the White House, and you do not have control of the House, and you do not have control of the Senate, you have no leader, you have no control, you have no nothing. And what happens at that time are some of the most extreme elements of the party get a lot of attention because there's no leader to sort of set a policy or get everybody on board for something. And so that's why we're seeing a lot of AOC. That's why we see so much attention to Mamdani in New York. That's why we're seeing attention to the extreme elements of the party, and they're pretty darn extreme right now. And you don't see any sort of countervailing organizational force to try to keep them in line. I think what's interesting, there's something interesting going on right here in the District of Columbia right now after Trump's crime thing, which is you saw some national Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, literally tell Trump to get lost and, you know, and completely denounce Trump's policy. But you're seeing local Democrats here who are local leaders, and they're all Democrats. It's a one-party city, of course, who are being kind of understanding, saying, okay, this could be helpful. Don't just call Trump a fascist and, you know, throw a Molotov cocktail here. So you're seeing Democrats kind of all over the place in the way they react because they have no central leaders.
Well, Byron York, you mentioned Hakeem Jeffries, who could be a putative leader. He decided to tweet out yesterday, the crime scene in D.C. most damaging to everyday Americans is at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And that's the most toned. I spent some time in D.C. I'm heading back there for NatCon, first week of September. Everyone should go to the National Conservative Convention, see me speak. And I know I'm taking my life in my own hands. It's not a safe city. And everybody knows it. And you have these Democrats up there. Well, no, it's perfectly fine. Everything, remain calm. All is well. They're Kevin Baconing it in Animal House.
Yeah, it was really embarrassing, and you know, Trump knew this. I mean, Trump knew how they were going to react, but he knew that there would be some Democrats who would do exactly what you just said. But he also knew that the mayor might be a little more open to this and more understanding, and that's exactly what happened. If you remember, it wasn't that long ago, I think it was in 2023, when Biden was president, the D.C. City Council passed an insane crime law. It reduced the sentences for all sorts of violent crimes, including carjacking, which was absolutely epidemic at that point, and violent crimes committed with a gun. And it reduced sentences for all of those things. And the mayor thought it was terrible, and she vetoed it. And the city council turned around and overturned her veto. That's when Congress stepped in, because, as you know, Congress has total control over the District of Columbia. They passed a bill to throw out this new District of Columbia local crime bill, Republicans passed it, and enough Democrats were worried with an election coming the next year that they just didn't want to be in this position. The Senate finally went along with it, and Joe Biden allowed it to become law. Crime in the District of Columbia has been an issue for Democrats. They don't know how to deal with it. They feel better if they have a Democratic president and they can hide behind him, but they've never figured out how to deal with crime here.
Well, Byron York, chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner. You can follow him at Byron York. We've got about 15 seconds. Do you think Trump's going to succeed in lowering crime, or do you see the regime media trumpeting that crime has actually gone up because he's forcing good statistics? We only have like 5-10 seconds.
The surge only lasts 30 days, but crime in that period will go down.
Well, let's hope so for the sake of the good people of Washington, D.C. And you guys, the good people of the audience of the Hugh Hewitt program, you need to stick around. Possessor of my own hair don't. It is not long. I see, I got to get it cut army style, because if it gets too long, I feel like one of those 65-year-olds, even though I'm not 65, walking around Marina Del Rey in his flip-flops with his Hawaiian shirt, running out the clock with a dental hygienist he just started dating after leaving his second wife. I don't want to be that guy. But that's the hair I get if I let it go uncut. Dwayne?
Oh, you wanted to bring me into the hair conversation. Okay.
Well, you're an expert.
Oh yes, I'm certainly an expert in that.
What? Now look, I think a lot of these Democrats have pretty distinctive hairstyles. Gavin,
Gavin
obviously
does. Yeah, Gavin does.
Anand Giridharadas. Giridharadas.
Yes.
Who, like he said, he looks like Heat Miser.
Yeah, I think he's like going to be in the next Pixar Elemental movie or something.
I mean, it's like, dude, do you not have a girlfriend or own a mirror? Now you've met my wife.
I have.
Now, and I can spike up my hair if I have to. And
oftentimes you do.
And sometimes I do. Sometimes I want a little edge. And you've met my wife. Do you think she hesitates to tell me if my hair is, I don't know, what's the word, ridiculous?
She doesn't hesitate on anything that she has formed an opinion on, from my experience.
That is true. You've been over to the place.
I have.
You've met the dogs, Sparky and Bitey, and you know that my wife is not someone you want to make any sudden moves around.
Correct. You do not want to cross Mrs. Flicker.
She doesn't have my last name officially.
Really?
Yes. That's true.
Oh.
And there's a reason for it, and it's a long, convoluted one that involves laziness and my top secret security clearance.
Well, that makes sense.
So, but yes, but she does go by Schlichter. And did you know you can go by a different name than your own as long as you're not attempting to commit a fraud?
Or run for Congress in Delaware.
Well, was that the witch?
No.
It was somebody else.
She said she wasn't. She said she wasn't a witch.
But her name was Brunhilde.
Could have been.
I mean, it's just, I don't.
Gavin Newsom. You mentioned Gavin Newsom.
Ugh.
Did you see the last bit he put up on X just a little bit ago saying, challenging Donald Trump to quit gaslighting about the misreported crime stats? It's gaslighting.
Was he unaware that a police chief or a police captain had been arrested?
They actually fired a captain for doing just that. But Gavin Newsom thinks it's just gaslighting.
Well, if dumb more money, Gavin would be Warren Buffett. Guest host Kurt Schlichter, senior columnist at townhall.com, retired Army colonel, former trial lawyer, even though I still have my license in various jurisdictions. I am the author of American Apocalypse, the Second American Civil War. And now I get to do something that I always enjoy when I'm guest hosting the Hugh Hewitt Show on a Tuesday. It's to welcome David Drucker, the Dispatch's senior political writer. You can follow him at David M. Drucker. David, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, well, first of all, I respect your fashion sense. You like the jacket? Can you see a jacket?
Love it.
Oh, okay. Well, if David Drucker approved, you've got to understand, he's a dandy. I'll see him at CPAC, maybe at NatCon, which is the first week of September, and I'll be a speaker. And he'll come in, and he's literally like the best-dressed reporters. Most reporters look like they got thrown up by a hobo that had eaten another hobo. But Drucker always looks good. And but more importantly, he always is incisive. David, how do you think this redistricting thing is going to play out?
Really hard to say. Obviously, they're trying to do it. The Republicans are in a number of states. What I found really interesting about this, Kurt, from the beginning is that it was completely driven by the White House. The National Republican Congressional Committee, according to my sources, was not consulted, nor is it involved. The Republican members of the Texas congressional delegation were neither consulted or are they involved. And so obviously the governor of Texas, the legislature, they're involved because they're the ones that have to do the work and draw the lines and approve it. This is a really sort of unusual play here. And the president's been, pretty transparent. He's doing it because he wants more seats and he can do it. Now, will it play out as smoothly as the White House thinks it will? Unclear, and it's not just because Democrats have skipped town and prevented the Texas legislature from forming a quorum. There could be some legal issues, and also every time you create, you think you're creating more partisan seats, which both parties have done since basically the founding of the Republic. You do that by weakening the partisanship of the existing seats. And if the election were to take a left turn, a wrong turn for Republicans in 2026, and it's still early, but when your party controls the White House, it can be difficult for you to defend majorities in the House, at least. You could end up losing more seats than you gain. So it's not a guarantee, but it is an interesting power play.
Well, that's the proverbial dummy mander. When you weaken your seat so much, you're vulnerable in a wave election. Isn't that a potential problem in California where they've already, done the gerrymandering? Could Gavin Newsom be walking into a trap?
Well, he's less likely to walk into a trap in 2026 with Republicans in control of Capitol Hill and the White House, right? If we were talking about 2022, depending on how things look in 2028, even though it's a presidential and not a midterm. Sure, when you again, the principle holds. It's just that the Democrats have less to worry about because midterm elections tend to be rebukes of the sitting president. And it didn't turn out that bad for Joe Biden in the first term, but they did still, the Democrats, lose House seats and lose their narrow majority. And so, again, they could be playing with fire, but their odds are much better than Republican odds when you're looking at it from this perspective.
Are the Democrats very worried about the October 15 hearing before the Supreme Court on the Voting Rights Act, which is challenging the existence of racially gerrymandered seats for lack? It's more complicated than that, but it's essentially racially gerrymandered seats compelled by federal law, as well as down the road census changes that even without the current census controversy still should reflect a lot of major blue states losing seats. Are the Democrats concerned about this long term?
Yeah, sure. Particularly, with the next reapportionment, there's a great deal of concern just because you've seen population patterns. But as we've seen with this stuff, Kurt, there's an ebb and flow to this, right? We lived through a period where Republicans thought they had they had a raw deal when it came to the Electoral College, and now it looks like things aren't necessarily so bad, and we see Democrats complaining about it. And so I know with reapportionment they're worried. I'll assume they're worried about the Supreme Court case, and they'll howl about it. But we've seen the political coalitions from a racial perspective, an ethnic perspective, begin to be a little bit more malleable. And so I think this stuff is going to be sort of less important going forward as it has been, although, we could then metastasize into another pattern just with groups in different places.
Well, David Drucker, we've seen major changes to the coalitions that you and I grew up with. I mean, we came in at the tail end of the FDR coalition dying out. Then there were then we had the Reagan years, and now we have something very different. It seems to me the Democrats have a real challenge, because while they still talk about being the working man's party, they don't seem to be doing a lot of things that the working men are very happy about. We just saw the Teamsters start giving money to Republicans, which hasn't happened for a while. We've seen the Democrats on the bad side of a lot of 80-20 issues, including yesterday, where they seem to be taking the side of crime in Washington, D.C. How are Democrats trying to work with their coalition so that they can build a majority again, but still balance it out against the progressive trends that seem to be buffeting them?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of internal debate right now inside the Democratic Party about the best path forward, how to deal with the Republican coalition that Trump has created, what kind of nominee they should put forward in 2028, what they should have to say in next year's midterm elections. I think, and that it's a debate that is happening, and it's very robust, and there are a lot of views, but it's ongoing, and they haven't settled anything. And history's any guide. They won't settle anything until they have a nominee, and maybe the nominee won't get the job done, but maybe that nominee will. Most of the Democratic Party's problems have been cultural, not necessarily economic. And I don't mean the economy hasn't lost them a race or two here and there. It certainly did last year, but it wasn't so much Democratic fiscal policy that sent them to Trump. It was inflation and this feeling that what the Democrats were doing wasn't working, and that what Trump had done the previous term did work. But when you look at the issues that have really altered the coalition, at least for now, it's cultural issues, whether we're talking trans issues, gun rights, a whole host of things. And these are things that the party will work through, and one way or the other, they'll figure it out, because eventually, and I don't mean they'll necessarily figure it out soon, but parties always get tired of losing eventually after they've lost enough. So I think the real question is, when will they have lost enough to conclude that a change of course is necessary, allowing them to support the candidate that wants to make that change of course?
Well, David Drucker, we saw in 1972, after losing with a moderate, they went hard left. Same in 1984, after losing with a moderate. My money's on them going hard left in 2028, and that may be what it takes for them to come around. We got about what do you think? We got about 15 seconds.
Way too early to tell. They have some not hard left candidates that are running. And a lot of these things can be about personal connection and charisma, and we'll just have to see how that primary unfolds.
Well, thank you, David Drucker, the Dispatch's senior political writer. Follow him at David M. Drucker on X. I'm Kurt Schlichter. This is the Hugh Hewitt program. Stick around. We got more to come.
Hold it right there. I'm back from vacation. Not really. I pre-recorded this on Friday. It's my Relief Factor segment, because I take Relief Factor with me on vacation, just like I take it every day on this program. And we're going to remind you every hour, even when I'm out on vacation, that Relief Factor does indeed work. If you take it every single day, you will feel much better, because it works with your body's anti-inflammatory system to reduce the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. You should be doing the former. You're definitely doing the latter. Every day, Relief Factor means more and more to a comfortable life. Stop using the over-counter meds. Try it the old-fashioned way. Icarian curcumin with Veritron Omega. And the starter pack, $19.95, gets you 3 weeks of Relief Factor. You take 3 on the first day, every day for the first week, 2 on the second week, every day on the second week. and then one on the third week, and then forever after. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, or visit their website, relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com.
And I'm joined by Alex Gray, the CEO of American Global Strategies. You can follow him at AlexGray40K. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Hey, Kurt. Good to be back.
Hey, well, look, you guys at American Global Strategies are involved with all aspects of American foreign policy. And, we got a couple of big foreign policy issues happening right now. Just the other day, we had 2 Chinese ships decide to run into each other as they were hassling the Philippines. Wow, you can almost hear the Roadrunner theme playing as these ships collide, killed a few PLAN sailors, as a matter of fact. What does this incident tell you about what's happening in the South China Sea, and what's it foreshadow for confronting the Chinese in the Western Pacific?
Yeah, Kurt, I'd say a couple of things. I mean, one is it's kind of the logical it's kind of the logical conclusion of just how far the PLAN, Chinese Coast Guard, and the kind of Chinese maritime militias have been pushing things in the South China Sea and the East China Sea, right? They've been doing this now since the early 2010s, and they've just increased how aggressive and how reckless they've been in that period. And so it was only a matter of time before there was some sort of really serious incident. And frankly, it's a bit of kind of karmic justice that the aggressors ended up hurting themselves rather than the people that they've been pursuing and bullying for the last decade and a half. So look, this was bound to happen. The one thing I would encourage your listeners to not take away from this, because I think we obviously did this too often with the Soviets, we do it with adversaries all the time. They do clownish things like this, and we assume that maybe they're not as big of a threat as we thought they were. I would caution everyone that just because these guys can still make some screw ups, do some very unprofessional things, they're still not obviously where they need to be in terms of high-end war fighting to match, I think, the size of their strategic objectives. The reality is they can still do a lot of damage in Taiwan, to the Philippines, to the U.S., ourselves, to our allies regionally. They have global ambitions. And so let's not let this kind of burst of foolishness fool us from just how serious of a threat the Chinese, and particularly the Chinese Navy, actually are.
Well, Alex Gray, it's as a retired Army colonel, I understand that it is always a bad idea to rely on the incompetence of your enemy rather than your own skills in any kind of confrontation. But looking at the balance of forces, we have to understand the Chinese have no real experience with mass blue water Navy operations. The Americans have been doing that since World War II, although they haven't been in major combat in a blue water setting since then. So, would it be accurate to say that we probably have some experiential advantage and training advantage, but they've got numbers?
Yeah, they've got a couple of things, Kurt. I mean, as you know far better than I do, one of the things that the Chinese are terrible at is they don't have a non-commissioned officer corps, which obviously, is the backbone of any professional force. They don't have they treat their NCOs terribly. Their junior enlisted are treated terribly. Their professional military education program is pretty much a joke. They're still a long ways down the learning curve, particularly the PLAN, in terms of the type of professionalization they need to be an expeditionary naval, to have an expeditionary naval capacity. Logistics remain a challenge. Combat at sea replenishment remains a challenge. So there are all sorts of things that they're not quite there yet at. But as you say, look, quantity has a quality of its own. And think about the military balance. They aren't just moving along quantitatively, they're also moving along qualitatively in the types of vessels they're building, the capacity they have to repair those vessels and to recover from attrition. There's a lot that they're doing that makes them formidable. And what I'm equally concerned about, if not more concerned about, is that while they're doing these things on the qualitative and quantitative side, even if they have some issues, some technical issues that we've laid out, the reality is the United States is going in the entirely wrong direction in terms of the size of our fleet, the size and sophistication of our industrial base, the ability to recover from attrition in a high-end conflict, munition shortfalls that we would need very much in the Indo-Pacific. These are all very real challenges. And it's why the military balance, I think, is just not headed in the right direction. I think President Trump's going to get us corrected. But for the moment, if I'm sitting in the Indo-Pacific after 4 years of Joe Biden, I'm looking at this military balance and I'm saying, man, Chinese are headed in one direction and the Americans and our allies are headed in another direction. It's time to right that ship.
Well, Alex Gray, Donald Trump ran on a platform of strengthening our Navy and our Air Force, the main branches in the Western Pacific. It's been 6 or 7 months. Why aren't we on the ball? Why aren't we moving towards the goal and getting this fixed?
Well, look, I think the president is going to absolutely get there, and he's going to put forward, I'm sure, in his next budget, an aggressive plan to finish what he started in 2016. I was on that campaign and was involved in helping him put together that plan to build a 350 ship Navy and to have the Air Force, not to mention the Army and Marine Corps, that we need to be successful deterring and, if necessary, winning a high-end conflict. The problem is, Kurt, in term one, we had multiple secretaries of defense, with the exception of our last one, Chris Miller, who didn't like the president and spent most of their time undermining him instead of carrying out the things he ran on to try and be successful. And, unfortunately, in some ways, the president's plans that he was earnest about and that he wanted to see put forward in 2016, they just didn't get implemented by people in his own administration who didn't have his best interests at heart. And I think now he's got a team that can actually go out and build the ships, build the airplanes, rebuild the industrial base that we need to be successful.
Well, Alex Gray, CEO of American Global Strategies. You can follow him on X at Alex Gray with an A. 4OK. Thank you for coming on the Hugh Hewitt Show here on the Salem Radio Network, Salem News Channel. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. We've got more to come, so stick around.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt for AndrewandTodd.com. They are our sponsor from Sierra Pacific Mortgage, 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172. On the Friday that I left for vacation, Andrew sent me a note that interest rates are the lowest that they have been all summer. So just as you have to finally make a decision on a house, interest rates are working in your favor. Call Andrew Del Rey or Todd Avakian or Sierra Pacific Mortgage at 888-888-1172 and find out what works best for you. Whether you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down. Whether you're a senior citizen and you want to get a reverse mortgage. Whether you're a first-time buyer and you want to use FHA, or you just want to buy a vacation house or a second home or an investment property. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172.
The power of just doing things. You should just go out and do things. And that's what Donald Trump did yesterday. He went out and said, I'm done with having a joke for a capital, a crime-infested cesspool that's a petri dish of social pathologies. He said, no, we're not going to do it. We're going to clean it up. Now, when you talk about crime, you're really not just talking about crime, the ones covered by statistics. And we know the statistics are fraudulent. They just fired a captain in the Washington, D.C. Police Department for inventing statistics, depressing them so the truth wouldn't get out. It's when normal people talk about crime, they really talk about disorder. Are you walking down the street? Is some homeless hobo with a knife going to threaten you and your date? Are you going to step in some of his, scat? What are you going to see drug addicts doing their business? And I'm sorry to be graphic, but that's what millions of Americans are living with because Democrat politicians refuse to act. Donald Trump is going to act, and we need to deal with the problem of marginal people dominating our public spaces. Public spaces belong to normal people. Okay? Not the weirdos, not the losers, not the mutations, not the junkies, not the hobos, not the criminals, not the perverts. You and me, normal people, not the marginal ones. What has to happen to them? Well, they've got a plan for that. Cut number 3. Carolyn Levitt.
The Metropolitan Police Department, with the support of the new federal agencies who have been surging on the streets of the District of Columbia, are going to enforce the laws that are already on the books here in Washington, D.C. For far too long, these laws have been completely ignored, and the homelessness problem has ravaged the city. So D.C. Code 22-1307 and D.C. Municipal Regulation 24-100 give the Metropolitan Police Department the authority to take action when it comes to homeless encampments. So homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time. Again, these are pre-existing laws that are already on the books. They have not been enforced, which is part of the reason for this federalizing of the National Guard to bring in this assistance for law enforcement. While we are targeting criminals and trying to remove criminals off of the streets, we also want to make DC safe and beautiful, and that involves removing mentally disturbed individuals and homeless encampments as well. So we will be using these regulations and code that already exists to clean up our streets.
And that is something that we have to do, folks. Okay? It is not compassion to allow the mentally ill, the drug addicted, the criminal to exist on our streets and dominate them and terrify and threaten normal people. That's not okay. You can say no. And that's what we're doing here. All right? If you are, look, it's like the proverbial guy, bartender at closing time. Hey, buddy, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Well, where will they go? Hey, figure it out. You're an adult. If you are insane, you should be taken to a mental health facility and, if necessary, forcibly treated. If you are a criminal, you should go to jail. If you are a drug addict and want to get clean, which not all of them do, you should go to rehab and get clean. But you don't get to exist on our streets, owning them, dominating them, threatening normal people. We can say no, and that's what Donald Trump's doing. Why won't the Democrats do that? Why won't the Democrats say, hey, this park should have little kids, teen lovers, old men playing checkers. It belongs to normal people. Why does it belong to the criminals? Why does it belong to the junkies? Why does it belong to the perverts? Why does it belong to the hobos? We can say no. We can say no to disorder and chaos. It's my pleasure to welcome James Lilacs, resident humorist, Substack contributor. You can find him at james.lilacs@substack.com or at Lilacs on the Twitter machine. James, what do you think of this thing happening in D.C. where the Democrats have apparently decided that they're pro-crime? What's up with that?
I guess. I'm an old D.C. crime warrior exaggerator. When I moved there in 1991, my first night, there was a helicopter in the backyard, beam stabbing into my room. And I'm thinking, what exactly have I gotten myself into? Well, a couple of weeks after that, the whole neighborhood went up in a riot. There was a police shooting and 2 or 3 days of the zesty, vibrant, mostly peaceful, but kind of fiery protest. And I was sitting there watching a cop car on fire 2 blocks from my house on the television set, thinking that if anybody comes here, I have nothing more to defend myself with than the pointed end of a corkscrew from getting a wine bottle open. That was 91. And I lived through that for many years, and it wasn't enjoyable. Murder was off the charts. You never felt safe. I worry about my wife walking home all the time, but we made it out unscathed. I went back to D.C. in the teens many times to do some book stuff, some C-SPAN stuff, and was surprised and delighted to find how actually safe and humane and wonderful and civil and dare I say, vibrant, as they always say. And then that ended. And now it is what it is. So murders have gone down maybe 10 or 20%, but they're still ridiculously high. Everybody knows that the amount of crime that people experience on a daily basis does not get reported because A, there's no point. They're not going to find the guy. B, it's possible they're going to juke the statistics downward. C, if they do find somebody, they're going to plead out for something lesser. And so everybody lives with this incremental state of disarray and uncivilized behavior where everything's locked at the people's drugstore. I'm sorry, I'm dating myself at the CVS, where you're eyeballing the guy as you're walking down the subway. Everybody knows what it's like to live in a place that's got a spiky, elevated sense of you are not safe. And then it spills into the important districts, which really start to get upset about it. And that's where DC is now. Now, we can do this, I guess, because it's federal territory and there's jurisdiction there. When Trump talks about doing it to other cities, I think that's where it gets a little thorny. I don't know exactly what the National Guard could do here in Minneapolis to find the guys who carjacked me a month ago. People get to a point where they say help, and they don't particularly care where the help is coming from.
Well, James, it seems to me this opens up a lane for a Democrat who's, well, normal. That is, one who does what revolutionary Bill Clinton did, which is crime is bad and you should work instead of get government money. And he became president with this radical, notion, which of course has been completely and roundly rejected by the current crop of McGovernites, I mean Democrats. Do you think there's any possibility we'll get somebody who's not crazy?
No, I don't. I absolutely don't. Now when everybody's falling over Mamdani and the rest of these guys in the Democratic Socialists feel as though they're insurgents, which I love. They have conventions. Now that we got a guy who looks like he could become mayor, let's start talking about confiscating all property and eliminating the nuclear family. Keep it up, guys. But you're right. I mean, there's a huge, I keep saying this, there's a huge middle lane there for somebody to drive down to if they just want to. But for some reason, the idea of wanting an orderly city, which is not full of roaming meth fentanyl zombies, and wanting to be able to walk into the store without seeing somebody push a cart out without paying, that's now made the equivalent of being an authoritarian Nazi, that wanting that granular level of civic order is somehow seen as a sign of authoritarianism. It's nonsense. So yes, there's a big lane for somebody to get in there. The question is whether anybody would trust them. They would have to go against the people in the party which believe that any instrument of the state that is used to combat crime is ignoring all of the things that caused it in the first place. And we have to do the root cause things first, because if we don't do the root cause things first, we'll never solve anything. But consequently, we never do the root cause things. And if we do, it doesn't work. And the moderate Democrats don't want to do anything on top of that to get the streets back. And so it's left eventually to the people who walk in and say, leave it to me, strong hand, going to get done. And frankly, as worrisome as some of that may be to some people, most of the people looking at this saying, I don't care about the details. What I want is my safe city back. And so that's where we are today. Now, whether or not other cities, as I say, learn from this and say, there actually is an electoral pot of gold there waiting to be absolutely tough on these miscreants who are making life miserable for citizens all over the city. We'll see. Whether they do anything, we'll see.
Well, it looks to me like the Republicans are ladling out of that pot of gold. You got the Democrats going, well, hot blondes in jeans are fascist, and Law and Order is also fascist. And I'm thinking at some point, normal people are going to go, well, I'm not really sure what fascism is, but hot blondes and Law and Order sounds pretty good to me.
It's anything that you don't like in your political opponent. The idea somehow that authoritarianism is invested solely in the right, when we all know that given the opportunity that the various elements like the Democratic Socialists of America and other sorts would blow through the Constitution like the Kool-Aid man coming through that brick wall, simply because the Constitution is an irrelevant old document written by old white dead slave owners and enshrines a whole bunch of ideas that keep us from utopia. So they would do any number of authoritarian things concentrated with executive power to bring about the good stuff. So yeah, the term fascism, Nazi is meaningless. The problem is that it's being redefined to encompass things that were standard, ordinary American political conceptions 20, 30 years ago, when you mentioned Clinton. So when you actually have true authoritarianism and actual Nazis coming along, you have no words left to define these people because you wasted them demonizing these reasonably moderate opponents of your policies.
Well, I think we have another danger, and I've warned of it in some of my books and some of my columns, which is, if you break all the rules and all the norms to stop Donald Trump from his relatively moderate program, because he's in many ways, he's indistinguishable from some of Clinton's positions. You're not going to like the guy who comes along next, because we're not going to live in disorder forever. Now, we've only got about 30 seconds left. What do you think? I'm like, is this crazy talk?
No, not crazy talk at all. But I don't think we're going to get there. I don't think what follows after Donald Trump is somebody who's going to take sterner medicine. I'm more curious to see the opposition party get back in the same track, so that as a country with two parties, we are both grounded in an appreciation of American exceptionalism and the things that make us great, so that we have a center from which to work from. Unfortunately, if those guys keep going down the democratic socialist route and saying yay for that and yay for rent control and yay for public groceries and the rest of it, then it's going to take a lot longer to get us back to the center. But that's my Pollyanna center-loving sort of stuff.
Well, let's hope it all works out. I don't know. I'm hoping.
I don't know.
This is thank you to James Lilac. Some breaking news. The Democrats in Texas have folded like a house of cards. Holy cow! They've keeled over like when you shoot a fat boy in the liver with a .25. It is a beautiful thing. They're going to come back, and now the big question is whether Greg Abbott, governor, who appeared earlier on the Hugh Hewitt show with me, decides to be merciful or not. Because right now, the current map, he's going to have to call another special session. So they're going to have to redo the thing. The current map is +5 for Republicans. He could carve out 10 to 12 Republican seats. And then if that happens, our friend Jasmine Crockett, no relation to Davy Crockett, who didn't run away, she's toast. And you could do the Highlander strategy for my adopted home city of Houston. There can be only one. You stick all the Democrat votes right in there, and you just carve up all those nice red suburbs and get a whole bunch of new Republican seats. Oh, Dwayne, I'm tingling. Tingling.
It is pretty interesting, because it's being the PR side of the Texas Democrats that fled the state. They're saying, and they're telling local television in Texas, that we did what we set out to achieve. We aren't caving. We stood on principle. We achieved our goal. And everyone's like, okay, what goal was that exactly? Well, we got national attention. Okay, that national attention got you looking at losing 5 seats to now losing as many as 10 to 12. But at least everybody now knows that you're losing that much. So I guess that's a goal they achieved.
It's like Ned Beatty at the end of the canoe trip going, that was a great ride.
Well, something like that, yes.
Yeah, except more dignified. I mean, they're completely broken. They're just completely destroyed. And I it's the new brazenness, which is, we've been utterly defeated. We've shown our impotence. This is an amazing win. It's like when they go pound on the door at some ice station and, a clerk says, no, you can't come in. And they're like, we came here to do our oversight.
The best part of this.
Oh, ta-da!
The best part of this is they were financed by Beto O'Rourke's Political Action Committee, right?
Yes.
Beto O'Rourke today, or earlier today, was at Netroots, because they were having their convention this week.
That's still a thing.
It's still, apparently. And at Netroots, he went on this cussing tirade demanding everybody fight. Fight, 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 fight. The people he's paying to fight by fleeing the state are coming back home with their tail between their legs. It's just glorious.
How appropriate to have a tail between your legs if you're a furry. There you go, babe.